Hi folks, I'm Dan McDermott. Welcome. This is the McDermott Report live from Lynchburg, Virginia, every weeknight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. On the line with me is Mr. Glen Connolly. Glen, how you doing? Let me try that again. Glen, you there? Hi, 253 area code. Glen? Got an issue. Let's see here. I can't hear him. Let me put this one on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, are you there?
I'm here now.
Okay, it shows you listed twice. That's odd. Maybe you called. Did you call with Google Voice, or what'd you do?
No, I called once, and I think I hit the one button too soon, or I wasn't sure because I was in some sort of a hoot queue. I didn't know if that's where I should be. So I hung up and I called again.
A hoot queue. Okay, I'm not sure what that is either.
I think it said I was in a hoot queue or something. And I've never been in a hoot queue, and it could cause me to lose my job, I think.
I think so. Yeah, that's okay. So I guess we got it now.
I tried to call you again on Google Talk, and I don't know. I guess I tried to call your computer. I'm not good at this. My friend Jason might come on. He's like a Google guru. But I tried to call you on Google Talk, but I think it was your computer I was calling, and you're not on your computer, are you?
No, it's got to be that number, the 818 number.
Okay.
That's what. But anyway, okay. So anyway, all right. So you're in what town? You're in Washington State.
I am.
All right. Well, what we're going to talk.
The United States.
Yes, still for now. But I think Rick Perry's going to move out there.
This United States. Who's going to move out here?
Rick Perry's going to move out there, and you guys are going to secede, right? I don't know. I'm making fun of Rick Perry. He's a good guy, but he's misspoke. He said Texas, when they joined the Republic of Texas, when they joined the Union, they reserved the right to split into smaller states, which makes sense from the perspective of, you get 2 senators per state. But anyway, he said that they could secede when they joined, that they were allowed to secede. And apparently this actually came up in the 1860s. And it was decided you can't secede. Or at least, whatever. I don't know. All right, so we're going to I got somebody calling. Go ahead.
No, let's go ahead.
Well, anyway, I wanted to I got a personal story I want to start with. And then we got some news stuff. But I was in court today, and Glen is a 911 operator. So he's often involved in situations that end up in court. But in this case, and I had a speeding ticket, and it was I was in a 35 mile per hour zone. I was going 51 miles per hour. Now, the state trooper was there. I didn't see the sign. I wasn't in a hurry. I was going to, of all things, a horseshoe tournament, which I'd never been to before. But a friend was coming, who lives like 4 hours away, was coming in town for her Moose Lodge or Eagles Lodge horseshoe tournament, or I think it was Moose. It was at the Moose in Lynchburg. And so I was going out there, and I was having a nice leisurely time, enjoying the view, whatever, and all of a sudden there's blue lights, and I didn't realize I was in a 35. I thought it was 55 or 45, whatever. Anyway, so I got my ticket, and I went online. I was thinking about paying it online rather than going to court, and I saw online it said, this was, of course, I procrastinated, right? So it's the night before, and it was at 3:45 or 4 o'clock. I went to pay it online, and it said that you have to pay it by 3:30 p.m. the business day before court. And so it got me thinking, me, analyst, I thought that was stupid for a couple reasons. One, not for the benefit of the criminal, right, who was speeding, but for the benefit of the court system. Because, tell me if I'm right, by nature, Glenn, most people who would speed are procrastinators. They're probably running late. That's the reason they're speeding. And the procrastinator would there's a chance, I would say, I think there were, I did the math, like 130 people were at 9 o'clock, 130 or 160 cases, right, called up, or incidents. One guy, but the best was this guy who was charged with depositing mud on the roadway, which I thought was the weirdest case. But apparently he was doing wheelies in somebody's lawn, and so the guy gave him everything. And then, but anyway, so I'm in court. And I'm thinking they should allow you to pay it up to like even during, but because for two reasons. One, it would thin out the docket, and of course that's a big thing everywhere. It's very expensive to have court, right? You have to pay the judge, who's making six figures in most cases, and then you've got the bailiff, who's the retired police chief, and then you've got all the clerks and everything, and they're all making big money, government benefits. So if you can thin the docket out and maybe have fewer hours or something, then that's beneficial to the whoever's paying for all this. And the other thing is you make more money because almost every time the judge would reduce it, right? I was 51 in a 35, guilty as hell. I said I'm guilty, and I was like looking at my GPS and didn't know what I was doing, but I wasn't in a hurry or anything, but I was guilty. And he reduced it to 9 over from what, 17 over? And he did that with everybody. As long as you were, everyone was polite. Go ahead.
What was the difference in fine by doing that? What were the?
It's $6, 6 a mile, or six. I think it's $6 per mile. So in my case, it would have been 16 times 6, but it was 9 times 6. So he, well, 35, 45, 51 is what am I?
16.
16 over, and he gave me 9 over.
16 over.
So 5 times 6 is $30. No, 6 times 6 is $30. It's $36. So I saved $36. Had I paid it online, the state would, it was state trooper, so he charged me under the state, so the state gets the money. If a town cop charges you under town ordinance, then the town gets the money in Virginia anyway. So they would have made $36 extra. Now I'm just that's peanuts for the state, but if you multiply that by everybody, right, that's a big deal. And I bet he could shave 3 to 6% of the docket every day on average, right? And because a lot of people would wait till the night before or the early that morning. I'm running late or my kid's sick and I don't want to go, so I'm just going to pay it. Well, they make more money and it thins the docket out. And so that, I don't know, not that I want to assist them in getting any more money from me, but it just seemed to me that, does that make any sense from your perspective as part of the man establishment up in Washington?
I would think, yeah, as far as a practical standpoint, trying to thin the docket and reduce the caseload, it would be smart to even be able to have a clerk there to accept the payment. But I would think probably once you're at court, you've already inconvenienced yourself enough that you've either gotten out of work or whatever you have to do to get there. You're probably not going to want to pay the full fine. You want to take the chance of getting it reduced by the judge once you're there. Although that seems like a practical thing to do. It also, the people that go to court, they tend to pay less because it gets reduced, and yet they're using up the court system. They're causing
they're paying either way though.
To pay money.
No, but no, they're paying either way. I think my ticket, I don't have it with me. Wonder if I can find it. It's got all the.
Who's paying it either way?
No, they charge you court costs. It was like $65 in court costs, and then I paid
you had to pay court. You
had
to
yeah,
pay court costs, huh?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, $65.
Okay.
Let's see, how many minutes was I before the judge? I was before the judge about 5 minutes. So it's $65 for 5 minutes. That's about $400 an hour. Glenn, tell me the list of things you would not do for $400 an hour. That's a short list.
Hey, so you were headed to a horseshoe tournament?
I'm impressed with the patience of people who are into that.
I'm not making any judgments. I'm just wondering if you were on the way to a horseshoe tournament.
It's going to be bad if he starts out. Now, I'm not making any adjustments. It's like, now, there's nothing wrong with it, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
We don't have horseshoe tournaments as far as I know out west. But
you have serial killers.
Why didn't you say to the trooper or the judge? I mean, the first thing I would have said was, "Hey, 35. I'm going 51. Headed to a horseshoe tournament." Close counts and speeding, doesn't it?
All those things I praised you. I'm going to retract. Hey, I figured out I'm a genius.
Why don't you do a story on that? I think that's interesting. Why don't you do the story on that in one of the newspapers?
I may. I used it in my show tonight. Maybe I'll write it up. I'll aggregate my own
well,
myself.
Not just write about it, but actually check into it. That why don't you do it?
I will. I'll do that.
Why don't you do it?
I will. Okay, that's settled. Hey, I also have a new efficiency here. I was picking on Shar. I asked her. I said, at 8:20, will you bring me coffee? And because I'm stuck in this chair, right? And then I figured out what I can do, because Emily got on me, right? Like a women's rights issue. Like, she's the call screener. She's not she doesn't put toothpaste on your toothbrush. Anyway, so she's a sweetheart. She's listening right now. She's probably got me on her dartboard. But anyway, so now I moved the coffee pot over here. So now I can just pour. See, I've got my thing here, and I couldn't get it to come on, right? I'm a former. I was the director of communications at Randolph-Macon Academy for like 6 years or something, until I got into the restaurant business. That'll be a chapter in my book, How to Lose $1 Million Before You're 40, opening a restaurant. But anyway, I couldn't figure out how to turn the coffee pot on, right? I'm like the guy everyone would come to with the problem, turn the ON OFF switch. I couldn't figure it out, but I had an extension cord and there was a wall switch, but the wall switch was averted, so you have to turn it down, turn it up. I don't know. But anyway, now that we've lost all of our viewers,
does Emily not know that if I were screening calls for you, I'd be your gopher for coffee too?
Well, you're a good guy, Glenn. You don't even cuss. You don't shave. When are you going to send me a better picture? Put some makeup on or something.
They don't get any better, Dan. They don't get any better than that.
Is that your high school picture from like when you were a child? No, is that your high school graduation picture from when you were 23?
No.
That was a dig just then. That was a dig.
So,
just kidding.
Can I ask you some questions that aren't really news related, or?
Yeah, sure, anything.
Because there may be people watching who are wondering, maybe their first time watcher, maybe they're going to watch this on replay or something, or maybe even months down the road. As your audience increases, they may watch this and want to know a little bit more about you. But didn't I see something that you had a cameo appearance on?
Yeah, I was on Real Housewives of DC.
Oh, Real Housewives.
Yeah.
What's Real Housewives?
Okay, the alleged.
They're not desperate. They're just real.
Yeah, the alleged White House gate crashers. They live in Warren County, and I've known Tariq Salahi for 20 years. And anyway, when they attended the White House state dinner and were not on the official list of guests, because it's all put out there for the society pages and stuff, what they're going to eat, who's wearing what, who's coming, who's in, because it's the most exclusive ticket in town. I mean, it was President Obama's first state dinner. It was honoring the president of India, or prime minister, or whatever he is, the head of India. And anyway, so they attended, and there was this big thing about the White House gate crashers. And I was on Good Morning America, Fox News, all that stuff, because everybody in the world called me. Everybody called me because I had written about them a couple weeks ago, because they were on the Real Housewives of DC. And I was the only person who had written about them in the last couple months. And so every single reporter...
Prior to this happening, right?
Right. It was just like 2 weeks before they they indicated that I need to say alleged. And they've threatened to sue me twice so far, so I'm going to say alleged.
And you're friends with one of them?
I have known one for 20 years. He's nice to me, to my face, and then his attorney says they're going to sue me for something, and she won't look me in the eye. But that's fine. I mean, I wish them all the best. Anyway, so so everybody called me, and I did Good Morning America, which was the most traumatic experience of my life. And it was so funny because I spent like 2 hours, and I was on there like 18 seconds, and I was so nervous. It's like waiting for an STD test or something, hypothetically. And
how would you know?
I'm hypothetically speaking. I'm trying to draw some analogy, and none come to mind that I would personally experience. But anyway, so like, so anyway, Inside Edition called, and I didn't do that. I was just terrified. I mean, but I wasn't used to that, right? And I knew, you don't let it go to your head when that happens. It happens to every reporter when you happen to be on the ground and something big happens, and everybody wants you because they don't have anything yet. It's a huge story. Nobody knows anything. So they go to the local reporter who's been writing about it, and they Google you. And I was in Google News and Google and all that. And so they all called. but you know it's going to be 10 minutes. Everyone wants you, and then nobody wants to return your calls after a week. So you just look at it like that and enjoy the ride. It's fun. But yeah, I was out there taking pictures, and they filmed me, and I got into this tiff. Then Tarek, I was taking pictures. There's a camera crew on me, and then Tarek says, what is it? Dan, can we have a private conversation? And I'm like, sure. And then he says, as we're walking, he says, you know, we're mic'd. I'm mic'd, right? I was like, okay. So we go into the winery lab where they, I guess, test wines and stuff. It looks like a lab with microscopes or whatever wineries use. And there are two of the biggest cameras. Now, I've been on TV and stuff. I've seen, you know, when it's a big, you know, the local affiliate camera, and then the DC affiliate camera, and then there's like the camera that is that's producing a primetime television program, and that's what they had, and the sound guy. So there's three people in there as we have our private conversation, and I'm just in shock and like, what in the world is going on? And then this producer who was yelling at me earlier for taking pictures, when she had two camera crews on me, right? They're filming me as I'm taking pictures, and they're taping me, and then she's like, you can't take our picture. And I was like, lady, that you have 3 cameras on me right now taping this, and I can't take your picture. I've been invited here by the mother. And there was this tiff, and I don't know about all the family drama. That would be a 5-hour program, and we wouldn't touch it. Anyway, so yeah, and one of the last episodes, they were the media's here. They're not supposed to be here yet, and they're all having drama. And then they flash out there, and there I am with my camera, you know, picking my nose or something. I don't know, just looking for something to take a picture of. And so I played the evil print reporter in the Real Housewives of DC. That's my my primetime network TV thing. So I've done night, I've done morning show, and now I've done a primetime as a cameo as the evil print reporter. So that's an accurate description.
Okay. Well, I thought it was Desperate Housewives, but it was Real Housewives.
Real Housewives. Well, you can argue.
Okay.
You could go either way, having seen the show. But yeah, it was interesting. I got to meet a lot of people. Made some friends at Fox News and Washington Post, Politico, and it was a fun ride, and I learned a lot. It was fun. But we've had a few stories. That's probably the biggest. But we've had a few. The abusive driver fees, our newspaper broke that in print statewide. Then the Speaker of the House wrote an op-ed saying that we were idiots and we were wrong, and we were right, and it blew up, the biggest story in the state, and they ended up repealing the law, and we were completely right. So that's kind of neat when the Speaker of the House says you're wrong and puts it in writing, and then he has egg on his face, and they all but have a special session to reverse themselves. And then this one time, the picture I took that was probably most famous was of this guy who dressed as the Joker. He tried to kill somebody, and then he drove down Skyline Drive, and he was I guess I don't know if I could say nutcase, or he had I don't want to offend nutcases, but he had some issues.
No, mental issues.
Yeah, he had some mental issues. I know every time I write about something, or one of my reporters does, I get these emails from people because we don't use the current term for whatever the condition we're describing is, so I'm reluctant to even describe it. But he had some stuff going on that I don't understand. But he was dressed as the Joker from Batman. He shot his buddy. I assume he thought he had killed him, but the guy lived. So he was wanted for attempted murder. He was on the run. But he assumed I guess he figured I killed the guy and I'm running, because he didn't know the guy lived. Anyway, they gunned him down at the entrance to Skyline Drive right in Front Royal. And we got there with the only pictures there. And then as soon as I got all my good shots of the van with the side blown out and the some of the guy lying there dead. And then the troopers and everybody came, and then nobody else. And when the TV and everybody came, they couldn't get the pictures I had. So that one went worldwide, and all over the place. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. AP ran that, and I let them use it for free, and then they sold it. So I was like, that was my last picture I gave AP. So anyway, but yeah, that's the long answer.
Can they do that? Can they do that if you allow them to use it free? Can they then take it and sell it as theirs?
I could have pursued it, but do you want to piss off the Associated Press? You know? And did I specifically say don't sell it? I said you could use it. I didn't specifically say, and I don't know. But after they went ballistic on this Obama guy, who made the Obama poster, for or against Obama, I think that I don't know. I see both sides of that. The guy who I guess he took a photo that was licensed to AP, right? It was an AP member photo or an AP employee photo of Barack Obama when he was a senator running, and he took that photo and made that famous Hope poster, and it went viral. And I guess he was selling T-shirts or whatever and donating money to the campaign. I don't know if he was making money off it. And there's this big legal battle about copyright infringement. But then they sell my photo, and I didn't get a dime.
Yeah, you should have just appealed to journalistic ethics.
Yeah, I should have called Rupert. And
so what's
that was a dig.
Is he on the agenda?
I'm pouring my coffee now. Yeah, Rupert Murdoch's on the agenda. I'm waiting for somebody to call in. We're going to do this thing on a bill collector thing. That's an interesting story. But yeah, the latest is the lady in charge, Rebecca Brown, right? She resigned, and then now the head of Dow Jones has resigned. And I remember just last time you were on, I think I was making the statement that how come this hasn't impacted any of the News Corp U.S. holdings yet? Not that I'm giddy or anything. I mean, I'm an admirer of Rupert Murdoch. He's sort of, he's in terms of an industrialist, he's like a Henry Ford or any of these big guys, Rockefeller. He is a true media baron of the 20th and now the 21st century. So, but obviously what they did is outrageous. I own 3 tabloid-sized newspapers, but I would never, ever, the stuff hacking into some 13-year-old kidnapped victim's phone, and then to listen to voice messages to get tantalizing details for your stories, and then the family then deleting some messages because the box fills up, and then the family gets this false sense of hope that the kid's alive because the phone's being used, and it turns out it was these News of the World guys.
And the police continue to investigate as if perhaps she's alive, right?
Yeah, I don't know the details. But that's the thing. See, this thing's been going on for years, and it was like they hacked into some B-list member of the royal family or who cares? But this really resonated with people. They freaked out, and so the proverbial poop hit the fan, and that's why this has blown up. And now but see, this is like I made the analogy last night. I don't want to go too much into this, but like Anthony Weiner was an attack dog for the left. He was constantly beating up Republicans, and he was pretty effective. He was like, when they talk about NPR, the dangerous left-wing radio network, he said, yeah, click and clack, the car talk guys are, dangerous left-wing extremists and stuff like that. But then when he screwed up, the knives were drawn, and it was like Breitbart who was out for blood, and it's because this guy was such his own house was not in order, yet he was throwing stones. And so it's like if you have a newspaper, and now he's published an apology. It's nicely written, but really there's no love lost between some of these politicians. The former Prime Minister Gordon Brown was reduced to tears when the News of the World came to him and said that they were going to print these exclusive things they had found out about his child's illness, and they were going to make it big news, and just stuff like that. There are things. It's decisions. I got this thing. I'm curious on your thoughts on this, because the next thing we want to talk about after this, I want to talk about you and what you do, because you're a 911 operator for 17 years. I'm sure you got some stories. But anyway, I got this press release for these kids, and they had it was prescription fraud. They had I don't know if whatever store, some drugstore, big chain store, I guess, and there was somebody who worked there and someone who was a friend, and they had obtained some. I guess they were drug addicts and they were trying to get high or whatever. And so one was like 19. They look like nice kids, you know. Although I mean, anybody can look good, right? I mean, but Shar was actually putting it out on the web, and I looked at it and I said, "What did they do?" And so I killed the story. I just said, you know, these are 19-year-old kids, and the police released their mug shots, and they're drug addicts. And the more I see this, the more I see the money we're spending. I'm not advocating. I don't do any illegal drugs. I mean, I don't drink alcohol. Once in a while, you know, I was at my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, and I had a rough morning the next day. But I'm drinking decaf coffee. You know, I don't smoke pot or any of that stuff. But I just see these kids that are being turned into criminals because they're smoking a plant or whatever, and we should just, because it's illegal, we spend all this money and it's just this big deal, and it just I don't know. I just killed the story. I said don't print the pictures. They got enough issues, and I don't, you know, I'm not such a whore that I'm gonna exploit these teenagers for doing something stupid when really they need treatment more than they need their name dragged through the mud for the rest of their lives. What do you think?
Was it really a newsworthy story, or was it just something that, hey, it's something we can do? So
we're probably the only outlet that didn't, right? But like this paper, Lynchburg, has 35,000 readers, and this would online, I don't know, you know, that more than that. That's in print. The people who actually read the print paper, and so I just killed it. I mean, I was like, I'm not going to do this. This is,
you know, it was forged prescriptions, wasn't it?
Something. It was prescription fraud. So I assume, I have no idea. Something like maybe the inside person knew what a prescription should look like, so they went to the inkjet printer and printed some fake stuff up, and she knew a real doctor's name and something like that. I don't know the details. I don't want to say the names. I don't even remember the names. Right. I just looked at the pictures. And I was like, these are kids that could be our kids, you know, and they should. I mean, they, you know, if they committed a crime, you know, they got to go through the thing, just like I got my traffic, you know, my speeding ticket, and I paid it. But I'm probably the only media organization that didn't run it, because anything you get from the police department or the sheriff, like you work for a sheriff, when they put out a press release, so and so's arrested, and it's usually something newsworthy. Like the other day, they had one. I don't think I ran this either. This woman went 100 miles an hour in in a 35 or something, and because she was late for work, and they put her picture and sent it out with a press release, and I was like, you know, yeah, that's stupid, but there's a picture need to be up there. If you murder somebody, or you get busted for 7 burglaries or something, you know what I mean? That's one thing. If you rob a bank, yeah, you're a criminal. You know, your picture should be in the paper. But I don't see that. I don't see some kid. I don't know.
Yeah, using some discretion. So she wasn't late for a horseshoe tournament.
Rennie's. No,
that's the last time I'll say anything about that.
We're going to talk about your thing, and then I'm waiting for someone to call in a minute, and we're going to talk about this bill collector thing.
What do you want to know about? What do you want to know about 911? I think you're using discretion, the kind of discretion that news organizations should, and I think probably do, but not. I don't think they're discretionary enough in a lot of cases, but. I think the thing about speeding, but you see police blotters in newspapers. Some of them publish police blotters, especially in smaller towns, where you kind of see all the little thing. The 1400 block of 3rd Avenue, somebody's lug nuts were stolen last night. Those kind of things, which I think
somebody stole their nuts. That's news.
I think people like reading that in newspapers. I think those police blotters are actually pretty popular, even though it's petty. A lot of it's petty crime, but they like reading about that kind of stuff and knowing where the little crimes are occurring. It's not always the big things they like to know about.
Well, it's okay. You're right. And I read the press release, and I was like, I wonder what they did. Did they steal prescription papers? Or, I was curious about it. It was tantalizing. I looked, and Charlotte, I was like, do you know any of these kids? And then on the other one, I got a chuckle, because the way the press release was written, the lady going 100 miles an hour in a 35, obviously putting her life and potentially, anyone else's in danger, so that, she's got a serious ticket. But the press release, they put it was just written funny. It was like she was, quote, late to work. People never learn or something, and love Sheriff so and so. But I don't know. I mean, that's news,
Do you think maybe you're doing a service in some cases like that, where by publishing it, there's some maybe
I don't know,
public,
because
public ridicule that occurs that may also be a deterrence, other than just paying a monetary fine that might easily be paid?
I think yeah, I think it. I don't want to. I'm not some noble guy. I'm a newspaper publisher, but it's not as glamorous as it sounds. I think that for me, it was more not doing a disservice, because I think if you got some 18-year-old kid who's got a drug problem, and you charge him and he steals to whatever, if you point a gun at somebody's face to steal money to buy drugs, yeah, okay, that's not a victimless crime. But if you are committing prescription fraud, really that's a victimless crime, because you're paying for it, right? No one's getting stolen from. It's a victimless crime. You're just cheating on some paperwork, but you're paying for the drugs. And that's, I guess you do your penalty and stuff, but is that something that warrants a mugshot in the newspaper next to the guy who did an armed robbery, or raped a child? We had one here, this guy, indecent liberties with a 7-year-old. That's a different thing. I don't understand that. I can understand some drug addict trying to fake a prescription to get drugs. But the whole, how you could find a 7-year-old physically attractive is beyond me, but that's a whole different thing. But anyway, yeah, so I killed it. I said, don't run the picture, just kill the story. They got enough to worry about without that, but it's not some noble cause for me. It was just a call I made. And then Rennie texted me, said that on the Ustream feed, the ads, yeah, I think the way they do it, I don't know, I think that Ustream, they chop it and you miss 30 seconds or a minute, and then, but on YouTube, of course, it's all, but the Blog Talk Radio, I think I don't know if they preempt. In other words, the show continues, but you miss a minute, or if they pause it and then continue. I'm not sure how that works. But I don't control that. And I certainly don't get any of the revenue from those ads. I get them from YouTube. But anyway...
Did somebody say you got cut off by... Somebody was commenting that you got cut off?
No, they were celebrating that it was one less minute that they had to listen to us drone on about about drug addicts and stuff. So I'm looking forward to... somebody calling me in a few minutes, but in the meantime, let's she's going to call and tell me, we're going to rant about bill collectors, and she's got a really interesting story. But anyway, okay, so you are what do you call it, a 911? Glen and I met in the 80s when we were both young, tall, and skinny, and we worked at WLLL, WGOL. I was, I guess, news and announcer, DJ, all in one. Before that, I was a news director at WLVA, and I was in the same position, I think, that Charlie Gibson had, and he, of course, went on to bigger and better things at ABC. But we were an ABC affiliate, and then I went to WGOL and WLLL, and that's where I met Glenn. This is like 89, maybe 88. I don't know. Anyway, so now then you left. You were there as a college student. And then you left and went back home to Washington State, and you've got a lovely wife now. And you are, for 17 years, you have been the guy who, 911, what's your emergency? So
right.
What brought you into that? First of all, obviously, I guess that you just had to have a microphone. But it's an interesting gig, I'm sure, and I guess it has benefits and pretty good pay, but what of all the things you could have been doing, what prompted that? That's an interesting job choice.
Well, actually, when I got back here, I started to get back into radio a little bit, radio broadcasting, and then my brother-in-law, who is a deputy, let me know about a job opening down at the sheriff's office communications center, and my dad had been a My dad was a retired deputy there at the department, so I was familiar with the department. I was familiar with police work. I grew up with it. And, the pay was decent and the benefits were decent, and in radio, that's not always the case. And so I thought, maybe I'll give this a try, at least to get some steady income and some decent benefits for once in my life. And I just kind of started doing it, and I've been with it ever since.
And
so
go ahead.
I started out as a 911 call receiver, or maybe you want to call it a telecommunicator, I think is the current term. And then I worked my way up to becoming a dispatcher, where not only do I answer 911 calls, but at times I might actually be working as a dispatcher where I dispatch police officers. We didn't do fire or medical. We still don't at this point. And so I moved up into a dispatcher position where I'm dispatching the officers. And the last 4 or 5 years I've been a supervisor.
Okay.
I've been doing it for 17 years.
And how many folks are involved in that? How big an operation? How big a county is this?
It's one of the biggest counties out here.
I mean, what's the do you know what the population?
I don't want to say which county. I don't want to say which county because
okay.
I don't speak official. I'm not speaking now for the department, so I don't want to get too specific. But it's pretty big. It's one of the largest.
You're basically the spokesman for the department right now. I'm just kidding.
No, don't say that.
So, like Warren, like the city of Lynchburg is 75,000. Warren County is 30,000. Is it like bigger than Lynchburg?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's a major city. It's a city.
It's a county.
A county. Okay.
We're different out. We're different out here in that.
Oh yeah.
We have.
Oh yeah.
We have cities within counties. I believe Virginia is different, where once you become a city, you're a separate entity from. Go ahead.
I think New Jersey and Virginia. Virginia's unique in one of the things. We have independent towns and cities. We're the only state.
It took me a while to figure that out.
Yeah, you have a city. They'll have their own school system, the whole deal, completely independent. The city cops they have no jurisdiction in the county, and the county only if there's an agreement in place. Would the county police or sheriff have any jurisdiction in the city? Separate court system, the whole deal. Yeah.
Right.
But that's unique and inefficient in some ways, you could argue. Having to pay 2 school superintendents, 2 bus fleet head guys or women, all the things, the top of everything you have to have 2 of, right? So you save a lot of government salaries. So anyway, you were there. What's it like being the guy who answers the 911 call? You must have some interesting stories, funny stories or something, without being too specific.
Yeah, I've had some interesting ones. I don't know how funny they all are, but probably you get calls sometimes from somebody who's, their spouse has just killed themselves, shot themselves in the head right in front of them, and literally 10 seconds later, they're on the phone talking to me, screaming, and you're trying to deal with that. I had one where I had a robbery that was actually in progress. Normally we get calls from people, it just occurred, because they're not going to call right when the person's there with a gun on them. But in this case, it was one where somebody called in a convenience store. It was actually, I think, like a Sunday morning. It was a beautiful Sunday morning, still about 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and a 24-hour convenience store called 911, and I'm talking to the person, and she's in a calm voice, and she says, "Oh, we're being robbed." And I'm thinking, okay, they were just robbed, because she's so calm and everything. It must have just happened. And she says, "No, we're being robbed right now." And I said, "Okay, well, how can you tell me what's going on?" It turns out she was in the back room watching on the surveillance cameras while the other clerk was out at the cash register being robbed. And she said, "The guy's got a shotgun on him." And then she goes, "Oh no, he just shot him." So that was probably one of the more dramatic calls I had, taking the information over the phone. And then during the call, she's saying, "The suspect has just shot the other clerk."
Was she there, or was she like at home watching a closed circuit?
No, she was in the back room. She was in the back room watching it.
What do you think of?
Fortunately, he ended up living. But at the time, and it turned out it wasn't a shotgun. But my thought was, here's a guy who just got a shotgun at close range into the stomach or the chest, and it was pretty dramatic.
Yeah. Wow. That's why. Yeah. We were chatting about what to talk about tonight. I was talking to Glen last night, and there was one situation where there was a bridge that had washed out, but you couldn't tell at night. And there was a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, and she was driving to visit a friend, and she didn't know the area. And so she was going at whatever speed, and all of a sudden, it wasn't clearly marked. There was a sign, bridge closed, but it wasn't barricaded off. So she just drove right onto the low water bridge, which was covered in water and was swept into the river. So she's on the phone with 911 saying, oh my God, I'm in this car and my car's in the river. And so they're talking to her and the water's rising. And by the time they got there, she had drowned. So I assume while the 911 operator was on the phone talking to this woman, she's listening to her until the phone went out from the water. That's got to be traumatic. I mean, have you ever had to have counseling or anything, or?
We do. I haven't had to have it, but we do have when there are stressful incidents, major incidents, or if we have a call that's traumatic, we can get counseling for it. I haven't had to have it. I'm just kind of the disposition that for most of the stuff that's happened, I don't need counseling. I'm able to cope with it and deal with it. But you do have, there's, I had one call, probably the one that affected me the most emotionally was I had a call years ago from a woman whose husband had just slit his throat, and she called immediately afterwards, and she had the phone up to her ear, but she was leaning down next to her husband and sort of saying her last goodbyes, and I could hear him, not to be morbid or anything, but kind of gurgling.
Wow.
And to hear somebody say their last goodbyes to their husband or wife and have it right there is just, it still affects me when I think about it. So
yeah, that's rough. In a situation like that where you're on the phone, I know you hear them. I mean, I can't remember the circumstances, but they'll be on the phone. You're giving them the information, and they say, "Okay, I have them going out to you now." How does that happen? Is it based on caller ID? I mean, is there really like a unit in motion, and the lady hasn't put you on hold to tell anybody anything? How does that work?
Well, most dispatch centers now, probably depending on the size, in some cases you actually may have the dispatcher, the one who's going to be doing the dispatching, answering the phone, and so they may get the information from you, and while they're doing that, they may put you on hold temporarily or just set the phone aside or put it, they actually probably don't have a phone, they've got a headset, and then they may be giving the information out to, let's say it's a police unit, give that information to them, then they'll come back to the phone and maybe get some more information from you depending on what type of a call it is. They may be able to get it all from you at once, let you off the phone, and then dispatch the officers. They may keep you on the phone. But in our situation, in most big dispatch centers, what's going to happen is a call will come into a call receiver, telecommunicator, operator, whatever you want to call them. They're going to get the information from you and type it into a computer system, which is known as CAD, CAD, for computer-aided dispatch. And then once they get enough information that somebody can get dispatched out to you, which is basically getting a location, an address, they can hit an enter button and it goes over to another terminal, to a dispatcher who can be dispatching fire, medical, police, depending on what needs to be sent out. They can be doing that while the call receiver still has you on the phone and is getting additional information that they can then supplement to that original event that they sent over in the computer system to the dispatcher. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And one last thing, and then we're going to talk about this. We're going to discuss the bill collector story. You were there for years before the Green River Killer was caught. Tell me what that was like living there, and for anyone who can't remember, give me a brief synopsis of that whole situation with the Green River Killer. I guess there's a Green River in Washington State, and this guy was dumping bodies in it or near it.
Yeah, there was a. I think it's the biggest serial killer. I think he was the biggest serial killer in our history. the nation's history, if not the world. There may be in other countries, I don't know. But he was picking up women that tended to be like they were either prostitutes or in a vulnerable position, maybe runaways, things like that. And he was picking them up and murdering them, and he would dump their bodies. And he tended to dump them in locations near the Green River, which is in King County, Washington. And initially they found a couple, but after they had found a few more than that, I think they realized they had a similar MO on their hands, and they realized they were dealing with a serial killer. And so for years and years, they did not have anybody, they didn't really have a suspect in custody. I think they had a couple of people in mind that never panned out, but eventually through DNA, they were able to make a match, and they did arrest somebody a few years back who was then, actually he plea bargained. He admitted to a number of the murders in order to avoid the death penalty. However, I think the catch is that if anything comes up that he did not admit to at that point, if any other additional bodies come up and he gets convicted of those murders, he can be subject to the death penalty, is my understanding.
And I think that was it Ridgway, Gary Ridgway?
That's right.
And he was in court recently, and you see these, or not recently, but I guess there was this long line of people who were just permitted to just completely cuss him out, unleash everything. And it wasn't so much to abuse him, I guess, as therapy for them. You know what I mean? Because they can't bring their loved ones back. Just like funerals aren't at all for the dead person; they're for the living. It's part of you're freaked out because you've lost a loved one or a friend, and the whole formality. You do this. You got this meeting. By running us through those motions and these procedures, it's just a method of our coping and dealing with it, and trying to go from freaking out to, this horrible thing happened, and then mourning, and then moving on with our lives. But that's just, what a sicko. Yeah, that's insane. But you were actually pulled over, or I guess you were approached once, and you were for a brief moment thought to be the Green River Killer, right?
No.
But that's disputed, right? No, so you were sitting there with a friend.
What happened? This was the early '80s. I think they'd probably only found like a couple of victims at that point, and I don't even think it was widely publicized, or at least I wasn't aware of it at the time. And I was down by the Green River. There's a road that kind of follows the river there, and it's somewhat secluded, or at least it was at the time. And I had a female friend with me that I was just showing, that was from out of state, and I was showing her the river and the scenery and so forth. And an officer pulled up behind us, and I thought it was unusual. He actually had me. I think he had me get out of the car and questioned her independently of me. And I think at the time, I realized afterwards that he was asking her to make sure she wasn't there under coercion or anything like that. So they were just being not hyper, but they were doing additional patrols just to make sure that there wasn't something going on down there. But that was the first time I became aware that this was going on, the Green River killings. So,
what year was that?
That was probably about 1983.
Okay. Oh, so that was before I even met you.
Yes.
Oh, you were young, yeah. Okay.
Yes, I was.
Now you're the opposite of. Okay. All right. Well, that's wild. You'll probably come up with a different 911 story every time you come on. But that's interesting. I'm sure with your soothing voice, you've comforted many a victim over the years. Do you have a little outfit you have to wear, or do you show up in flip-flops? I guess you wear like a cop's outfit, but no gun?
No flip-flops, but no uniforms. We're not allowed to mention the U word. People freak out when when I mention the U word and make the suggestion. People at work freak out.
That's interesting. Normally there's a thing, and It's a dimly lit room, and they're wearing. I think they even have like a badge of some sort, but it's not a police. It's like something, and they look almost like a cop, except they don't have the big gun belt thing.
Yeah, a lot of places do have uniforms, and I think they can look fairly sharp. And I also think they do something for the morale and just the general mindset. I think uniforms in general tend to make people, it's kind of like when you dress in a suit and a tie. You just kind of conduct yourself a little bit differently, don't you? I mean, you were wearing suits and ties, I think, when I knew you, weren't you?
Yeah, and it's
even when we would hang out, you'd always have a tie on, wouldn't you?
In court today, I had a tie and I was dressed to kill. Yeah, it helps. It shows you show respect for the thing. And I also and I got my 6 points shaved off my speeding ticket. But yeah, and I even talked once. There was a piano player in Virginia. He still is. He's great. Dave. Can't remember his last name right now, but he is awesome. And he used to always play in a tuxedo. And I said, what's the reason? How come? And he said, because it's a technique. He said, people will give you more tips the better dressed you are. Because, and it's true, if you're in a restaurant and someone's wearing flip-flops and a T-shirt, you give them their normal tip. But if someone's dressed in period costume or in a tuxedo serving you, like a maitre d' outfit or something, then you might give them more subconsciously than if you look like a bum on the street. So,
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Anyway, let's bring Angie in. Angie, are you there?
Hey, how you doing?
I was gonna ask, can I use your name? And I just said, let's bring Angie in. So I guess your name's out.
Okay. That's good. That's fine.
All right. So you were tell me your story, but don't say the company names, okay? Just tell me while I get your shot ready here. I know you really want to,
Oh, well, it's a public company. It's online. They tell you exactly what they do. I went to court today. I had a judgment served on me for failure to pay a credit card. Apparently, there are third-party people out there that purchase charged off debt.
Okay.
And that's what happened this time. So I got a judgment, and I went to court this morning. I've been fretting over it for several weeks now. Happened to go, and judgments are never good things to have, of course, on your credit report, and they can go on for years if you don't pay them, accruing interest and such. So I went to court, and I prepared all of my documents and personal finances and current living situation, all this great stuff, and I go in there, and before I went up there, when they got to the attorney that was handling a lot of the cases there, they'd already been through several of them, the judge said that he was not going to, anybody that had a judgment for a third-party debt, he was not going to rule on them without original documentation. Well, what that means is, these companies go out, they buy these charged-off debts at half price, and then they sue you for double the amount plus interest and penalties and fees. But they have to have the original document from the original company in order to put a judgment on you and make it stick. So that was news to me. I didn't know that.
Well, that's a new thing, because that came up in the foreclosure thing. That, remember the guy, they called him the robo-signer, and he was there were a few of these where they were just sitting there signing thousands of documents a day that they had personally seen all these things, and it was legit when really it wasn't. And so it's called into question a bunch of these different things, these foreclosures. So so you got a temporary reprieve, but go ahead.
Yeah, the judge said, basically he said he wasn't going to rule on anything without original documentation. But here's the catch. If you don't go to court and you have a judgment on you, you'll automatically get charged. The judgment just stands. They will just file the judgment against you if you're not there to dispute it. But if you are there to dispute it, they actually need the original paperwork. So I got a 90-day reprieve I guess it's time for them to go out back to the original debtor and find that original document that I signed. It cannot be a copy. It has to be the original. And these are third-party debt collectors. You know, this is how they make their money. They make millions of dollars buying charged-off debt at half price and then harassing people day after day after day trying to collect on it, and this is how they make their money.
Okay, now let me ask you this. I'm just going to be devil's advocate here, and I'm doing a three-way shot here because I know Glen's going to want to weigh in on this. What should like in my case, I have people who owe me money sometimes for years. I think we figured it up. You and I went over it, right? And
right.
It was in the tens of thousands. I don't know, somewhere between 30, 40,000, 50,000. And I've never sued anybody because you figure if it's a client, you always think, oh, they'll pay me next month. And it's unpleasant, right? Because you know these people. But they don't pay you next month. And then you become the unsqueaky wheel, right? Because they're balancing, I'm going to pay this one because they're going to foreclose. I got to pay that. I got to pay this. They'll take my car. And then here they're going to sue me. And then here's Dan, you know, the nice guy. And so now years have gone by and it's accumulated, 30, 40 grand. So I can either just give up 40 grand, which I don't want to do, or I can go to a warrant in debt. And then I go to court, and it looks like a ticket or something. Or I could hire someone, an attorney, and then they get, I think, a third, right, 30% or 33%. And
yeah, I'm not sure what they get.
And I guess the other alternative is these companies like you're talking about. So I see both sides of this, but it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, a creditor can just charge it off. And once they charge it off, I'm really not sure what, it goes on your credit report. I'm assuming they charge off your debt. Yes, it goes on your credit report. So then you have these companies that they come out and they purchase these charged off debts. But they are third-party debt collectors. And, there are laws to protect you from them. I mean, I'm learning all of this. And actually, I contacted an attorney today because I'm going to have all my ducks in a row before I go in there. Now, I can call them and say, settle this. I'll pay you $600 if you present to me the original document, not a copy. I'm going to speak with an attorney to find out what my next move should be, because if I'm going to pay this, I would prefer to pay the original credit card company.
I don't think you have that option, though, do you? Because, you incurred the debt. There's not a lot of difference. I don't see what the practical difference is between let's say it's whatever mortgage company, or this was a credit card company, okay? If they hire a third-party collector, or if they sell the debt, I'm not sure what the practical difference is. You still have a third party going after you for, I think in this case it's about $1,700 or something.
Yes, but the original amount was less than $1,000. Okay, so now we're at $1,700. And according to the judgment, it's at 6% interest until the judgment is paid in full. But I think what people don't realize is that, you do have options. Of course, the ideal thing is to contact your creditor and make arrangements with them. Most of the time, they will cut it in half, and they'll make payment arrangements with you.
Yeah, because they're going to get 50. Yeah, even if they sell it to somebody, they may not even get half. By the time, because that's risky.
They're probably getting 50% either way. 50% if they sell it off, or 50% if they settle with you and you're able to make your payments. It's always good to do that with the original creditor, because they're going to mark it on your credit report as paid as agreed, which leads to the other problem. So now probably on my credit report I have the original creditor. So my question to myself and to someone else is, what happens to this debt now? If they can't produce the original document and they can't sue me for the amount, I'm assuming they're just out. But, what happens to it then? is it just kind of floating out there? I guess they can continue to search for that original document until they find it and see you again. There's a lot of questions that I have to get answered yet.
Glenn, do you have any thoughts on this?
Not really. Other than I think that they should have to produce the documents, because I was a victim of, it turned out to be an embezzlement fraud thing, but I was a victim of a student loan thing that I had paid off. But then when the institution was embezzling money, they reported that I had not paid it, and so the government was coming after me, and fortunately it all got worked out. But they should have to have the documentation. Can you imagine a bill collector agency getting some word that you owe $5,000 on a debt you never even incurred, and trying to dispute that without them having any kind of documentation?
Well, the larger question. Hold on. The larger question is, Glenn, you're a 911 guy. You're the head of it. Who the hell do you call when you're getting screwed? I'm sorry. You were saying, Angie?
Well, I was going to say one of the tips that I read, because I'm an avid researcher on everything and anything that happens to me or anyone I know, is that before you pay off your creditor, whether it's a third-party creditor, debt collector, you have to work a deal with them that they give you the original document before you pay them off, so that no one else can come back and claim that you still owe that debt. I mean, that's an important thing that people probably don't know. Once you have that in your hand, no one can come back again. I mean, the credit card company can't come back and say, well, you never paid this, blah, 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 because you've got the original document in your hand.
Okay.
I mean, my goal is to beat this thing. I'm going to see an attorney and find out what my next move should be. And typically, these third-party debt collectors go after people with assets. If you have personal property, they'll attach a lien to your house. If you have money in your bank account, they'll freeze your bank account. They'll garnish your wages. I'm really not in that position. Don't think they're really going to get much out of me but a payment arrangement. But my goal is to actually figure out how to beat this.
Okay, now
what you can do is stop the harassing phone calls and write a letter that the only way that they can contact you is by mail.
Okay, now let's be honest here, Angie.
Every day.
You do owe the money. You did. I mean, let's. I'm just gonna let's.
Yes, I did owe.
I mean,
money.
You entered into an agreement where you would pay a credit card bill, and then circumstances occurred that were negative on your financial situation. I think you and Rennie were both had great jobs, and then in the housing industry, and then of course, like many other great jobs in the housing industry, things didn't turn out so hot, and you're in this situation, and so clearly they extended the credit, and I mean they charge too much, blah blah blah. Everyone complains, but then they get burned a lot, and clearly you're trying to use any kind of technicality to get out of this or get it reduced. So I understand that.
Well, if I'm gonna pay it, I would prefer to pay my original creditor.
But you don't have that option if they sell the debt, and they can legally do it. But I'm going to rant on this for a second. Now, here's the problem. This is what caused the housing crisis. It used to be you'd go to your bank and you'd get a mortgage, and you'd pay off the mortgage for 30 years or whatever the terms were to the local bank. And the bank wouldn't loan you money if they didn't think you were a good risk, or they'd make you put 20 points down or something, because the bank knew that they had to get paid back, and they were dealing with some local person they probably knew. You probably had an account there, and they know, your kid has an account there. Then they got into this whole thing where they're selling the debt. Then your local bank gives you a mortgage, and then right afterward or soon afterward, they sell that paper to some third party, some big bank. And then that big bank was taking a bunch of these mortgages and putting them together and selling them as an investment vehicle. And then all these people were buying into these like stocks. And when I say people, I'm not talking Warren Buffett. I'm talking like teachers unions, big investment, big retirement funds. They make investments. That's how they grow their retirement pension funds. So a lot of people were impacted. As a result, instead of your local bank being choosy and saying, I want 10%, 20% down, and, Angie, wait a year, and, they would just, all of a sudden, they were able to sell it, and once they sell it, it's done, right? And housing never goes down, right? That's what we all heard. Housing is the safest thing. It never goes down. And I had one of these ladies. I was interviewing her on a Wednesday on a talk show. She was some mortgage person, and she was sitting there pushing this garbage, and I was listening to her, and I was like, okay, a stated income loan, what does that mean? And she's like, well, you tell us, what you earn, but we don't do any checks. And I was like, okay, a liar's loan, right? So I'm a cocktail waitress. I make 25 grand, and I'm going to buy a $400,000 house because I'm going to tell you I make 200 grand or whatever. And that happened all the time. And I'm going to do it. And then she's like, well, we have an interest-only loan. I said, who in the right mind would do an interest-only loan on a house? That is a way to buy more house than you can afford. And then I asked her, I said, what if the value of the house goes down? And she said, oh, well, that never happens. And this was about, what, 04, 05 or something. And I don't know. It was disgusting.
Well, the interest-only loans can be good loans. I mean, that's the loan that we had. But we were always, our loan was always underneath the value of our home. It was a good loan because I actually knew the person that gave me the loan fairly well, and I trusted his judgment. But, yes, we did have a big problem with the stated income loans. You could just go in there and say you made this much money and then give you a loan. And
well, with an interest-only loan, why don't you just rent? If it's an interest-only loan, you're agreeing to pay back interest, and you're still due at some point to pay the capital, the principal back, either with a balloon or whatever, or a refi.
Yeah, but, some of them had a huge balloon after 5 years or 10 years, or you did it interest only for 3 years, and then your interest rate was 10%. But our loan was a fixed rate. After 10 years, it went to a fixed rate of 6% or something. So it was actually a really good loan at the time.
Glenn, do you own a house, or do you? Glenn, do you rent or own, or what do you do?
Well, I own.
Okay. What year did you buy?
2004.
Oh, okay. So you got screwed, right?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you get screwed? I mean, what happened to your housing value prices?
No, it went up, and it's now back down to about the purchase price.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it was fun on paper. Yeah, it's like the rich guy said. I forget who it was. He lost billions. He said it's only paper. So
a lot of it depends on where you live and the number of foreclosures in your area too, which balances out to the amount that your house is worth. If you have houses that are recently built in an amount close to yours, you're probably okay. But if you're in a subdivision where there's a number of foreclosures, your value is definitely going to go down.
Yeah, we had a foreclosure just down the street from us in our development here. But we didn't buy a house as an investment where we thought, oh yeah, it's going to go up in value exponentially. We bought it as a place to live and a place to stay, indefinitely.
And that's not what people did. People bought their home more than they can afford and wanted to flip them in 2 years. You have to live here 2 years, I think, and then you can flip your house and make a profit. And
we bought it within, so that we could make payments. It's a conventional loan, fixed rate conventional loan, and we bought it so that we could pay for it on my income.
Yes, and that's what people did not do. They gave people loans that could not afford the payments. And me, myself, personally, I would never try to buy something that was not within my income limits. I don't know what people were thinking. But then, mortgage companies just giving them away.
Not all these guys are victims. They knew, I mean, some people are just stupid, but go ahead,
kind
Glenn.
of mob mentality, it's so-called conventional thinking, conventional wisdom, right? Housing prices never go down, right?
That's what they're saying, but I was looking at it, and I was like, this has doubled in 5 years. I mean, this is insane. This is not. I was looking at these things, these McMansions or town. I mean, little detached homes for $280 and then it was $400, and they should have been like $100. I was like, this is insane. It's just not worth it. There's a neat YouTube video where they showed there was a roller coaster. It was a graphic, it was a computer generated roller coaster ride, and they showed and the years would click on the bottom of the screen, and the roller coaster would go up and down and then up, and then the panic of the 1800s went down, and it was representing the housing prices. And then in 1929, 1930, 31, it went down, 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 and then went up, and then after World War II, it went up, and then in the from like 90 whatever 2000, it just went up, 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 up. It was the biggest increase ever, and it's because naturally it's demand. Housing, it's the demand. Everyone, any moron could buy a house. You could be just out of high school or whatever, and you're making $9. Not that that's a moron. I was being flippant, but you're making $8-9 an hour, and you can write whatever you want on a piece of paper, and all of a sudden you own a home. I mean, I saw this woman. She was a single mom. She was a waitress, and she bought her house, and I was like, man, I'm sure it's for sale now.
Yeah. Well, I think there was a story on the news too about a woman who had a mortgage on her home, and they went to foreclose on her. She'd been in it, I don't know, 28 of the 30 years of the mortgage, and I think she had 2 years left to pay. And she went to court. They took her to court, and they asked them, you need to produce the original note. And this goes back to the credit thing as well. You can't foreclose on her unless you can produce the original note. Well, that note from 30 years ago, it's gone. So basically, they told her, you own your home now.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, that's really not.
Home that you don't have the original note on it, but that just kind of goes back to the credit thing too.
That's kind of the other extreme, though, Angie. I mean, you have to admit.
What's that?
That's kind of the opposite extreme, though. I mean, that's not really right to the company. I mean, I don't know. Who's evil in this? It's hard to say. I just know that those guys on Wall Street and these investment bankers, they made money and money and money no matter what, and there's just not a lot of sympathy. And I still don't understand. We got to wrap this up pretty soon, but I still don't understand this debt ceiling. They got to raise the debt ceiling, and they're all duking it out and all that stuff. I still don't understand if they don't do it. If really they can't pay the debt, or if they're bluffing, and I don't know if they don't raise it, how that will impact the average person. I don't, we're not Warren Buffett. We don't own a bunch of stocks and stuff. How would that impact Glen, who's a 911 operator, works for a county sheriff? Angie works for me, and I work for myself. How would that impact us as just regular citizens? And should we be all bent out of shape about it? They're acting like it's Armageddon. I don't know. Other than it'd be kind of embarrassing at the first time in American history we didn't pay our debts, if that is in fact the case. Do y'all have any thoughts on this?
I think I don't totally understand it either, but I think to be kind of simplistic about it, I think it's like if you had a credit card and you were living off your credit card, and suddenly, and when you say, okay, I'm no longer going to pay my debt because I can't increase my debt ceiling or my credit limit, they cut you off on the credit card. How does that impact you when you've been living on it month to month, paying for your food off your credit card, paying for your living expenses, and just everything, everything you buy in a month's time for necessities, how is that going to impact you? I think it's similar to it would be similar to a country. The only solution would be to continue to print dollars, and when you continue to print dollars, you're going to get inflation.
It's worked great in Zimbabwe.
And you just kind of go back to the thing, my dad watches the news a lot, and he said something about he's worried next month he's not going to get his Social Security check, because I don't know if that has anything to do with what you're talking about, but I guess if they don't have some resolution by August 1st, that there may be people who won't get a Social Security check, and that's what some people live off of.
Yeah, I would hope that would be. I would hope that's way down on the
Debt.
list of things they're not going to pay. And I would imagine for the political future of anybody involved that is at the bottom of the list of things they're not going to pay. And that's the thing. They're acting like we have to do this. It's Armageddon, and Warren Buffett's like, this has to happen. But it's under dispute. Like Michelle Bachmann was out there saying, why don't they? Who has to say that they pay everything but not the interest on the debt? Why can't they pay the interest on the debt and then cut back on something else that month? You know, that week when they print the checks. And
they
it's
could,
just,
but they won't.
Well, that's the thing. It's confusing, and that's where the issue doesn't get the traction with Joe Sixpack that it should, because it'd be like trying to explain the Whitewater thing in the Clinton years to some average person. They don't care. They're not interested. They don't understand it. I still don't understand all the intricacies of it, and I don't understand all the intricacies of this. Nor do you, Glenn or Angie. And we're like, I mean, Angie and I work for a newspaper, and Glenn, you're really sharp, and I mean, it's confusing, and I don't know if I believe anyone on it. On either side. I think they're all full of smoke and mirrors, you know?
Well, and I think they're not able to be that flexible either. You're just able to cut back 1 week on, and then you have to figure out what it's going to be you're going to cut back on. I don't think they're flexible like that to be able to work it out like we do as normal people with our everyday living.
I would like to be a fly on the wall and watch Eric Cantor and Barack Obama go at it, you know, with their low blood sugar tantrums. That'd be cool, because those guys hate each other's guts, straight up. All right, any final thoughts, guys? I've kept you too long. Go ahead, Angie.
I'll keep you posted. I'll just keep you posted on what's happening with the credit thing, because I think it can be informative for people to know what their rights are, and that's what I'm going to be learning over the next couple of weeks.
How to beat the man. How to erase your credit debt legally.
Well, you know, credit is everything. My credit's shot again. I worked really hard to get it where it was, and unfortunately circumstances have brought me back down to where I used to be. But, you know, credit is everything. Everything works off of credit, and I think people don't really know what their rights are, and they just ignore things, and that's really the worst thing you can do.
That's the thing. See, this company, in a nutshell, you had your original credit card company. I assume missed, 75 payments or whatever. And so they sold, instead of going to a collector, I don't know if there's a difference, but they just said, okay, now we're giving you this debt that we owe of $900. You can have it for $450 or $400 because we're not going to get it anyway. And this company, now they paid $400 for it, but they own the paperwork, but they didn't produce it. But they own the paperwork that they paid $450 for, but the paperwork's worth $9 plus interest, plus probably collections expenses is in the fine print. So now they can go after you for $1,700 for this $900 bill that they only paid $400 for. So they'll hire their local attorney, and then they go after you, and then you get the thing in the mail. Now, a lot of folks in this situation are not as on the ball as far as paperwork as you are. So probably, I don't know, were there others on the docket that day, and how many did not show up?
There were several that did not show up, and it was automatic judgment. There were, you walk in, it's, do you owe this bill? Yes, I do. Judgment. There were several that people did not show up. It's an automatic judgment. So the important thing is to show up and dispute it, and then figure out what you can do. I mean, I called Blue Ridge Legal Aid. It's a free legal service. They base it on your income. So I called them today because I want to know what my rights are. It's not that I don't want to pay, but if I'm going to pay my money, I would rather pay it to the original creditor. I
don't think you have that option, though. I think you're just in a pissing contest with them. I don't think you have that option. I don't know if you should. But
well, no, I don't think you do. But what happens to that debt? Does that mean that this other company gets to put that on my credit report as well? And now I have two things on my credit report for the same? I mean, there's a lot of questions that are unanswered. That's
a valid That's a valid question. That's a very interesting question. If they sell the debt to somebody else and you're late in both cases, do you have? Does it show as two different things? And that's a question. I don't know. One of the credit bureaus could answer, I guess. That good luck getting them to give you a straight answer.
Well, I'll find my answer somewhere because I always do.
Yeah. You don't want to tangle with Angie. Now, how did you get service? How was the process served to you? Did someone like hand it to you, or did you just get it in the mail?
I got one in the mail, and I got one served to me. Yeah, I got one in the mail, and one was actually served to my front door.
For the people who didn't show up, go ahead.
Yeah, the people that didn't show up, it's an automatic judgment. I mean, if you don't show up,
right? But you said that
hearing.
But okay, for the people who didn't show up, though, did the judge did they stipulate that they did serve it and offer proof that they had served it before the judgment was rendered? I mean, what if they weren't ever served? If they were hiding?
It was on the docket. They were supposed to be in court today. If they did not show up, it's the judgment. You've got a judgment against you because you weren't.
That's not my question. You're not. That's not my question. My question is, if they weren't there, was the issue addressed? Were they served? In other words, what if they were never served, and that's why they didn't show up? Did the judge ask the question, or is it written on there so they know it was served on this date by this person? Like in your case,
that question was never asked. No, they never asked the question, were you served?
Interesting. I wonder if it was on the paperwork where they served it, but this person served it in that stamp. I don't know, but if they, that's another thing where I've heard stories of people suing someone for something bogus. I won't say any names, but they didn't serve it well or sent it to the wrong apartment, and they just said, we emailed his apartment 3 times or whatever, and the guy didn't even know about it, and then they could get judgment against somebody, and the guy had no idea that that this thing and would have disputed it or didn't know anything about it. But then all of a sudden they have a judgment they can collect, and then they really got a can of worms on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, I know that they always do it both ways. They serve you papers at your door. I don't know what happens if no one's there to accept them. I don't think that they just leave them. I think they physically have to give them to somebody, and they note that. But yeah, I guess you could be in a situation, but they do twofold. They try to get the papers to you both ways.
Glenn, any final thoughts? You're probably happy you're not in this situation, right? You got a government job. You're set. The last person they're going to get rid of is the 911 guy. You can't. I mean, the worse stuff gets, the more you're needed.
Well, if they could do away with crime and accidents and everything else, I would be happy to give up my job. But I don't think that's going to happen.
What do you think?
What you do is very important. So
you've remained silent on my whole the. What do you think about this whole thing by Ron Paul, and it's becoming more popular? This whole notion that we should look at maybe not, like I said, a pregnant woman shooting heroin, right? But somebody smoking a joint, that all the money we spend and taking these 19-year-olds and turning them into criminals, when it's no different than the politicians who vote for the laws and the judges who enforce them and the police chiefs go and have alcohol at night, right? What do you think about that? Do you think we should just leave it as it is? Because the war on drugs doesn't seem to be going so well. That we should we treat it more as like an illness and give them treatment, or keep it criminal and fill up our jails with these guys?
Was that for me?
Yeah, you're in law enforcement, sort of. Well, you're the in-between guy.
I think we ought to vigorously enforce all of our laws. That's my official answer. But personally, I think it's a combination of both. I think we need to have enforcement. There also needs to be some sort of for certain types there needs to be treatment. I think because without treatment, you're just going to once they serve their time or whatever their sentence is, they're just going to be right back at it, and it's going to be a continual problem. As far as marijuana, I don't know.
I don't think if some hippie wants to go in the woods, smoke a joint, it's anybody's business. I don't think they should be pulling over Willie Nelson because he switched from alcohol, which was killing him in his liver, to pot, which is not addictive and doesn't kill you. I don't know. I just think that whole thing is so stupid that it's just ridiculous, in my humble opinion.
Well, I think the whole point behind that is to keep them from doing other drugs.
All right, well, Glenn,
the gateway drug.
Okay, I appreciate it. We got to cut it off. Hey, Glenn, I want to thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you as always. You're awesome.
Have a good weekend. You too.
All right,
Angie.
buddy. All right, thank you, Glen.
You too.
That's Glen, and of course, thank you to Angie from
You're
Virginia.
welcome. You're welcome, and I'll keep you posted on what happens.
All right. I'm sure you will. I'm sure I'll get a running update and a request for a raise once they finally win. But you might beat them if they don't have that documentation. They're screwed because you're on them.
Yeah.
You're showing up with your legal pad.
Yeah, I'll figure it all out. So
you'd have made a good lawyer.
Well, I've been offered many types of jobs over the years. Everywhere I go, someone offers me a job. So I don't know. I guess I could do a number of things.
Well, I appreciate you calling in tonight, Angie. Thank you so much.
Oh,
and
you're welcome.
Folks, we are here every weeknight from 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. You can always call and join in. A lot of folks just listen. We've had anywhere from 50 to 2,700 so far and climbing. But most of them watch after the fact. But those who watch, they don't like to dive in. You can also call our number and just listen to the show. The way it works, the number 818-688-6625. When it's 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, you can just call the number, put it on speakerphone. You can just listen. And then if there's something that interests you and you want to join in, you can press 1, and then you'll go to our queue, and that's it. Or you can just listen. And so if you're bored and you need a good time waster, then just call the number and just listen to it. We'd love to have you participate, but either way, it's cool. And you can always catch me. The address is gplus.to/McDermott, and that will take you right to my Google Plus profile. And then just on the right side of my About, you'll see all the links to the YouTube and the iTunes Store, Blog Talk Radio, all that stuff. Anyway, I appreciate you watching or listening or participating. I'm Dan McDermott, signing off from Lynchburg, Virginia.